Celia, I appreciate you taking time to join us and be just our second guest on the show, which we certainly appreciate. Uh,
Yeah, thanks for having me.
yeah, you're
I'm not
absolutely.
a boring person. I'm happy to be here.
Well,
And
and
my
that's
favorite color is purple as well, so
is it
yay.
really? Oh, I was going to ask you because yeah, for me apparently it has nothing to do with the perceived meanings of purple. Apparently, it's supposed to have something to do with power and authority. I just have always been
Uh,
attracted to this color, and I don't know
yeah, I love
why.
purple. It's a very nice color. It's not too cold, not too warm. It's just it's just perfect.
Well, we certainly appreciate you taking time to talk to us and the psychology of video games. I read through the sample book that's available, and it was really interesting to see how kind of candid it felt like the book was. It feels like it has a really honest feel, and even just the way that like the table of contents was laid out. If you want to know about this part, this is where you go. This part, this is where you go. Give us the backstory. Why did you decide to write this book?
Oh, so actually, it's Routledge who contacted me because they're doing it's a series that they have, the psychology of everything, and they contacted me if to ask me if I was interested to do the video games part. So I said yes. What I love about this book. It's really for a broad audience, and I wanted to. Yeah, I wrote a previous book. It's called The Gamer's Brain. It's a very professional book. It's deep diving into a lot of concepts about how to make games better. So it's more for game developers. But this book, it's a very short book, it's 100 page, and it's for a broad audience, and it's to explain how games are made and also what is the potential impact of video games on players. So it's a very different approach, and yeah, I hope it's gonna make people understand games better.
Well, and you have both sides of the coin, right? You can describe it
Mhm.
from a developer standpoint and a user standpoint. When it comes to the psychology of video games, why is it important to kind of tell both sides of that story?
Oh, well, I think it's really important for the general public to understand how games are made because you see so many for movies you have so many movies and videos on how movies are made and people understand this better and understand it's an art form and for video games it seems that the public they don't know how video games are made and they don't really see the artistry behind it and the passion from from video game creators and that's the reason why it's important to bring back into perspective how video games are made and who is it made by and what's the process because it's a long and very painful process and it's an artistic process just like making movies but on top of that it's an interactive art form and so we need to also pay attention to how people are going to interact with the video game because if a movie you don't understand something the movie keeps going but not a video game if you don't understand what you need to do in a game then the game doesn't move on or it moves on without you so it's really important to understand how complex it is to make games.
We're talking to Celia Hodent about the psychology of video games, a book available now, and I'm curious when you look at misconceptions related to the psychology of video games from a
Hmm.
personal standpoint. I've really felt this during the pandemic, is I was always taught, video games are a waste of time and all of this stuff. And through the pandemic, being a social extrovert, this has been the best experience because I can stay connected with people. What are some of
Yeah.
the biggest misconceptions behind playing games from a psychological standpoint?
Yeah, so it's really interesting because you have like a very two different perspective. You have people who believe that games are a waste of time, that they're gonna make you violent, or they're gonna turn you into an addict. And you have on the other end of the spectrum people who believe that video games gonna save the world and it's powerful for education and powerful for health. And so the truth is in the middle, and there's a lot of great claims on both sides and people are a bit lost and yeah the public who like people who don't play video games that have more a tendency to believe that video games are not good or have a lot of negative impact but it's not the case so that's the reason why I wanted to do a very concise digest of all the research that's going on right now so that people can have a better understanding of video games. And first of all, people need to understand that there's a lot of different types of video games. And so when you say, well, are video games good or bad for you? Well, it depends on what game we're talking about. It's just saying, is food bad for you? Well, it depends on what type of food you're eating, the quantity, and depends also on you, on the context. And so that's the thing. Video games are you have a lot of different video games and there can be very positive from many aspects, and they can allow you to feel competent, to feel autonomous, and you can have games where you have to be tactical and coordinate with others. And this is what's interesting to understand and to have a more nuanced understanding of what games can do. I'm sorry, I'm turning off and on and off and on.
Uh,
So,
no, no worries.
my camera because it froze at some points.
Yeah, that's okay. We still can hear you fine, so we can finish
Okay.
on audio only if the picture doesn't come back. My
Oh,
final couple questions have to do with ethics and inclusion, and you talk a lot about the ethical considerations that are present in the world of video games. Walk us through some of those thoughts.
sure. So, like anything, video games have an impact on us. So it's not as crazy as people say, but it does have an impact. And we also, any human is going to be influenced by its environment. So just by seeing, if you see a door with a handle, you're influenced to pick the handle and pull. So it's not an influence that's bad for you necessarily, unless there's a fire and you need to escape, then it can be bad for you. But most of the time, it's not bad for you. And in video games and in tech in general and marketing also, there's some influence that is not as good for people because it's influencing people, for example, to buy something that they don't really necessarily want, or to come back at a certain point when they did not really want to come back at that moment. So it's all around the business model, how we sell video games today, and also how, what are the things that maybe are bringing people back into the game because maybe, oh, if you're back at that moment, there's going to be an awesome event and then it's never going to happen again. So it's a bit forcing people, the game can be good and they can want to go back, and that's fine. But if they are coming back to the game just because they want that awesome thing that's never going to happen again, then we're more into like a dark, what we call a dark pattern. So it's when we're trying to influence people to the benefit of the company, but are they at their expense. So you have more clear dark patterns, like when you don't realize that you're buying something or buying an option as you check out, and you didn't see, oh no, shit, there was something checked, I didn't see it. So that's a clear dark pattern. But in video games, you have kind of things that sometimes influence you to come back or to stay longer, or to get something because you're never going to see it again if you're not getting it now. And these are not great because it's not respectful of players and of the time. It's some sort of influence that is not down to the game, and it's more about selling the game and staying in the game.
Well, let's close with this. I see on your Twitter, you can follow Celia Hodent on
Yes,
Twitter, is you have this
absolutely.
masterclass about inclusion and equity. Talk about
Yes.
how those two themes are important in the gaming world and why you have the masterclass that you have.
Sure. So I care a lot about inclusion, and there's a lot to understand from implicit biases. So I talk a lot about the brain. I have a PhD in psychology, so I explain how the brain works and how we understand things. And we also have great powers from the brain, but also great limitations and biases. So these are important to understand when you make games, when you play games, but also if you want to have a more inclusive society. So I do a lot of workshops like these, and you can go on my webpage. It's celiahodent.com, and you have like public events, and you can see all the stuff that I do over there. But it's important if you want to build a fairer society to understand what are our human flaws, because if we don't take that into account, it's never going to work. Just like if you make a game or if you make an app, if you don't take into account the flaws that your users, like all users, have, because we're all humans, this gonna not gonna work as well. So as a society, we need to have the same process so that we can build a fair society.
All right, the name of the book is The Psychology of Video Games. Where is the best place to get that right now?
Oh, anywhere.
Anywhere books are sold, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thanks for taking the time to join us. As you said, early in the morning, we're on 6 to 9 a.m. Pacific time. So appreciate taking the time to join us. And it was really
Thanks for having
interesting.
me.
I'm going to read the book in whole, but reading the sample enough was fun. So thank
Yeah,
you.
let me know what you think.
Absolutely. Celia Hodent joining us on Gaming Morning Show. Thanks so much.